Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. On today's episode, we are chatting with Simon, who runs SRX Consultancy. And we're talking about the worlds of PR, media, communications, and media relations. And Simon is extremely experienced. He's a professional in this industry. He must be, he runs his own business. And you're going to get some amazing career advice from him. We're going to talk about the glamorous lifestyle maybe that he leads, and we'll also talk about the importance of networking and how you go about doing it. So without further ado, let's talk business with Simon. Hello everyone, and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. We are heading down to the southern parts of England for this one here. We're heading to see and chat with Simon. So hello Simon, how are you today?
Hi Danny, good to see you, mate. It's been a long time since I've been in the classroom with you, so it's good to be back doing it via Zoom.
Yeah, it has indeed. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's been about 10 years that we've known each other, I think.
Yeah, probably about 10 years. When you were a rock and wrestling photographer.
Yeah, back in the day, oh my word, yeah. And I was even chatting to my wife the other day, and did you stay at my house once? I think
yes.
Yes, yeah, because we were going back. When was that? And we couldn't work it out. I think it's just after my daughter was born. So
yeah, she's just been born, I think. Yeah, I came up and did some lessons. We hit the Christmas market. Yeah.
That's it, the Christmas market. Yes, oh my word. Yes. So 10 years later, here we are virtually on Zoom, still, and you're still helping students out, which I really appreciate. But, I know a bit about you, but people watching this might not. So who is Simon then? Who are we talking to and where are you today?
Okay, so I'm based in Chelmsford. Like most people, including yourself, I think I'm working from home at the moment. I work in PR and social media. My background is I was a journalist for 10 years. And then about 20 years ago, I got into journalism, sort of went to school, went to university, got into journalism, did that for around 10 years. Then around 10 years ago, I wanted to change and I set up my own small public relations and social media business. My first client was actually TNA Wrestling, which is how you, Danny, and I got to know each other because you would come and cover some of our events. And then from then on, I've sort of picked up different clients, some in the sporting world, some in the business world, some in the faith world. And as well as doing PR, which is getting them in the newspapers, on radio, on websites, I also do social media, which is sort of running their Facebook channels, their Twitter, Instagram, call for TikTok these days and things like that. So a real mix of stuff.
Oh, fantastic. So that's a real kind of varied portfolio, I guess we would call that, as it's built up. So has that always been your passion? If we can go back to when you were, say, 16, 18, GCSEs, college times, were you thinking back then, PR, media, journalism, that's me sorted?
That's a really good question, actually. I don't think anyone's asked me before. I loved the media. I wrote for the student newspaper. I had a show on the student radio station. when I was a kid, me and my brother would make up radio shows or make up film scripts and stuff like that. We'd have friends around and write films and things. So it's always been a passion of mine, but it was more of a hobby. And I always thought, I can't get into media, from a working class background, it's not for people like me. So I really never thought it was. And I studied economics and politics at uni, and I was thinking of those sort of, lobbying or something like that. But I found it all, by the end of uni, I've just found it all quite boring. I'm pleased I did it because it was a really good course. I learned a lot by the way, but I thought, I don't want this to be my life. And then, slowly but surely, I sort of got work experience in media, realized actually this is for people like me and I could do it. A few of my friends who'd left the university year before me had jobs and sort of recommended me for places, and typical thing of going and getting work experience. Lucky, lived at home with my parents. I was able to do work experience, just got paid expenses or whatever, and slowly but surely got offered jobs and sort of built my career from there, made contacts, which is what it's all about, really, just making contacts, getting to know people.
And we're talking about that you did economics and then you went into media and you did your degree and you learned from it, but maybe not in the subject that you wanted to spend your whole life. You're not alone in saying that. Lots of people I've spoke to have said that. And I think and I've said this before, it's the belief that you're told when you're 17, 18, you must now choose what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And it's a real tough decision. It's a tough decision to make, when I'm 41, let alone when you're 18, coming out of college and heading to uni, isn't it? So, so your career then ties in your passion with your skills quite well. Is that a general assumption that could be?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, like with anything, you pick up skills as you go along. And what I've always found is things that I find quite easy, other people would find quite hard. I think it's like any profession, you probably, I guess you never find it easy teaching a unruly class of 30 kids or whatever, but you can go in and you do it and you know what you're doing. Whereas if you stuck me in front of a class, I just wouldn't have a clue. And I think that's part of it. It's just building up that experience. You get better at what you do. I can do things a lot quicker now. A press release that would have taken me a day to write when I first started, I can now write in an hour. So it really does, it's all about experience, getting better at things, and also finding new challenges as well. You don't want to be stuck doing the same thing. And the great thing about PR and social media, and I've got my own business, is that I'm not just working in one place. I can move around, do different things, try different things.
Is there a normal day for you, in this world of PR and media and communications? And the word normal has been bandied about a lot in the last year and a half, hasn't it? But maybe like pre-pandemic or even now, is there a normal day where you wake up and go, all right, this is what's going to happen?
Not so much. It just depends what you're working on. There's general things you will do in a day. You will, maybe write a press release, you'll speak to contacts, you'll try and pitch stories. Pitching a story is where you might have, your client might be working on something really good, a launch of something, and your job is to get it into the newspaper. So you might email or call journalists and talk to them about it. That's a general thing. Obviously, with social media, that is a bit more regimented. We may put together a schedule at the beginning of the month. So for a couple of my clients, I can tell you what social media I'll be posting for them tomorrow, for example. So that's a bit more regimented. But yeah, a typical day, I try to work, I probably wake up about 8 o'clock. We'll start work then. And then, I'll finish about 5, 6, but sometimes in the evenings, because I've got clients all around the world, Impact Wrestling or American, will often work in the evenings. But I've got a couple of other freelancers I work with, which helps take some of the pressure off me as well. So, the benefit of sort of being, this is another thing people, your students will have to come up against at one point, is am I freelance? Do I work for myself, or do I work for a company? The benefits of working for yourself are, I am my own boss. I can come and do a half-hour break to do this. I don't have to ask anyone, can I appear on Danny's show or whatever? I can, I'll probably go to the gym in a bit, but then I'll work later tonight to make up for it. So you can do all those sort of things. I can take holidays whenever I want, but the flip side is I'm never really on holiday. I'll have to have my phone with me. I have to be checking things, find out if a client needs me. It's not like your boss, you tell your boss I'm off for 2 weeks and then you're off. If a client needs me, I've got to be there. So, it swings and roundabouts, but I do really enjoy working for myself.
Yeah. And you must do, because you've been doing it for quite a while now.
Yeah, about 10 years now.
And your business, it seems, is your business growing as well? I looked at your Twitter the other day, and I noticed you got a couple of people there, kind of helping you out or working.
Yeah, that's right.
It used to be just Simon, didn't it? And obviously you've grown a bit now. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's great. No, thanks for noting that. Yeah, I have. Business is growing. Actually redoing the website this week. I'm glad you said you didn't look at the website, because that's about 2-3 years out of date now. But the Twitter is updated. Yeah, so I have Lauren, who's based up in Manchester, and Connor, who splits his time between Colchester and Leeds, and they sort of both, I wouldn't say they work for me because they're not employees, but they're freelancers I bring on certain projects. So Lauren is, her passion is wrestling, and she's got lots of experience previously to working with me. She worked for WWE, she worked with UFC, which obviously, while it's in wrestling, is a similar sort of fan base and sphere. So she's come in and she works on that with me. Connor he's like, your kids would love him. He's like early 20s. He's a football genius. One of his things that he does is sets up like Arsenal fan accounts, builds them up to 1 million followers, and then sells them on to big sort of corporations and stuff. It's a good little, so he comes, any sort of football or sports stuff I get, he works with me on that with. And then, actually not mentioned on my Twitter, but in the faith world where I do stuff, I often work with faith partners. So we just worked on, there was a big global Jewish conference a couple of weeks ago for people from all around the world to come together. And I was doing the PR for that, but I don't have the PR contact, say, in America. So I got introduced to a guy in America who's got a very similar background and story to me. And it's like we're sort of brothers separated. He worked in the media, he went to PR, he does very similar things to me. And we worked on that together. So it's good I can do international projects now. I know him in America. I've got a contact that, although based in England, she's French and speaks like 7 or 8 languages compared to my one, which I don't even speak that well. So yeah, so it's good. It's all about finding partners to work with on different projects. It means that I can actually take on, because my time is limited and my abilities are limited, but by sort of working with Lauren or with Connor or with Glenn, then I can, I can expand what I'm able to do.
Yeah. And you mentioned your work with the faith world there, and the things that you've done with the Jewish community, the local Jewish community, and now you're talking internationally. Is that something that you actively pursued, or did you just kind of fall into that and you maybe saw a need or a desire for somebody like yourself in that? How did that come about? Because I remember when we, 10 years ago or so, if I remember correctly, maybe you can correct me here, it was wrestling and sports and all that was the main focus, and the Jewish faith side was just starting. So how did that kind of come about, and how's it still running?
That's great. I mean, again, and this is what I would stress to anyone, if you wanted to go into the media, whatever side you wanted to go in, whether journalism, PR, social media, it's all about contacts, really. So exactly what happened is, so I'm a member of a group called Liberal Judaism, which is part of the Jewish religion, similar to how, there may be Shia or Sunni Islam, or similar to how there may be Catholicism or Protestantism or Quakerism. In Judaism, there's 3 or 4 branches. Liberal Judaism, as it says in Latin, is the more liberal branch of that. The more we're sort of on the left, so to speak. And I was just a member, went to the synagogue, like some of your students may go to the synagogue, the mosque, the church, whatever. I went to the synagogue, and then you get a magazine on your seat. I go once a month, get the magazine, bring it home. And one time the magazine said, we're looking for a new editor. Our editor, who was actually, who I've got to know since, who works for The Guardian, she was obviously, working for The Guardian as a full-time job, and she couldn't also edit the magazine. They were looking for a new editor. It was quite good money. I had some spare time, so I applied for it, got it. It just comes out once every couple of months. It was sort of something nice to do. When you're freelance, when you're working for yourself, it's important to have more than one client. It really is, because, if Impact Wrestling, went out of business, which they almost did at one point, that would have left me with nothing. So I thought, at least I'll have something else. So I got that job. I would go into the office occasionally. I get to know them all. And then the person that was doing the public relations for them, she left. She got another job somewhere. She got a great opportunity and moved on. And they realized that actually public relations, because it's quite a small branch of a small religion, they decided that, a full-time public relations person wasn't what they needed, but could I do 1-2 days a week for them? So I took that on, and then I got to know people from that. And then they recommended me to another charity. Once you're in these niche worlds, you get recommended. Yeah. I've had it in wrestling and sport, and now I have it in the sort of faith world. And not just Jewish charities. I've done some work alongside some Muslim charities as well, because I got to know through the interfaith world. I got to know a couple of people in that world. So it's quite, it's quite interesting stuff. So it really is, it's a really beautiful way of just, you make these contacts, get recommended. And, I'm in the position now where I do have to turn down work as well, which is always quite a good position to be in, just because, if you're very busy with something, I always try and be, one of the things as well I've got a reputation for is always try and be honest with people. Yeah. If people approach me for a PR job specifically, or even sometimes social media, where I think, actually, this isn't suited to my skill set, or actually, this isn't a very good story, I don't think this will get in the papers. And I'm honest with people, because I don't want people to pay me and not get the results they're expecting. So yeah, but it's a good position to be in now, where I'm having to turn down work sometimes.
And what a great problem to have. And you've worked hard to get that problem. That's a credit to your hard work that you've been doing. With the, you spoke a lot about contacts here and networking, and it's something I kind of preach. But when I say it, people are just like, "Oh yeah, but you're a teacher, you don't do networking." So how important? I think we've got the point across of how important networking is. But how important is it to not burn your bridges and maybe not get personal on things? Personal relationships occur, obviously, with your personal feelings towards people, but also you're a professional who's getting paid to do a job. So, how important is it to not burn bridges with what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly what you said. That's how I approach everything. I'm a professional. Yeah. I'm paid to do a job, and I see myself, if I have a plumber come round, he's paid, I pay him to fix my sink. I pay a builder to build an extension or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's the job. And yeah, while the plumber or the builder's here, you'll make them a cup of tea and have a chat with them, but you don't get personal. And that's what I try and do. I try to build relationships with people, as in they know I'm good at what I do. They know I'm a nice guy. They know I'm an honest guy. Yeah. But, I don't take things personally. Sometimes, you can get caught up in the heat of the moment in anything. I'm sure you find it in teaching. You've written a great lesson plan and the head comes in and says, actually, that's not on curriculum. You can't do it.
Yeah. Oh, no, that never happens to me. No. You must be talking about other teachers. I don't know.
Yeah. From other teachers, I've heard that can happen. You've got two options, really. You can either say, okay, that's fair enough. This will be forgotten tomorrow. Just go with my life. Or you can make a big row into it and maybe burn that bridge. Yeah, I never really burn bridges. If someone doesn't like a press release I've written, fine. I explain to them that you've hired me as a professional. This is my, 20 years experience. I think this is the best way to do things. But ultimately, it's your business, it's your company. If you want to go with your way of doing things, then we will. Sometimes as well, I've worked with clients and 1 or 2 months in, I can feel it's not really working out. And I'll just very nicely, there's nice ways to move on. Just say, look, I don't think I'm getting you what you want. So let's part company. I think the other thing with contacts and networking is, some people think networking is turning up to sort of a networking event, standing round, having a sandwich, talking to people you've never seen before, never see again. And I've been to a few of them, and occasionally you may get something, but not really. Really what networking is about is when you're working somewhere, just do a good job, be a nice guy or be a nice girl, get on with people, because most of my work comes from people moving on. So I'll tell you an interesting story. The other day, I was speaking to someone at a potential client who I knew had worked for a big charity for the last 20 years. Yeah. She's moved on, and she said, oh yeah, we're working with this great freelance designer. And I said, oh, is that the same one you worked with at the previous charity? And she's like, wow, how did you know that? Like, did you know her name? And I didn't have a clue who this person was, but I just knew when you've worked somewhere that long and you go somewhere new and you need a designer, you're going to speak to the person that did it for you before. So, and now that designer has 2 lots of work for the CEO's new charity and for their old one. So it's just really good. And I think that's the key, really. Whatever industry you're in, make contacts, do a good job, be a good person. Don't let things personally get you down, in terms of work. If, I've worked for bosses I've liked, and I've worked for, fortunately, actually, when you're freelance, if you don't like a client, you can move on. But, when you're in a job, sometimes you can feel trapped and working for someone you don't particularly like, you don't think values you. Just get your head down, work hard, and move on as soon as you can.
Yeah. And networking there, you've hit on a few good points there, because I think the presumption is, and obviously social media is important, you're going to get Googled when you go for jobs and things nowadays, but it almost feels like a bit of a lost art sometimes, that people don't really talk about it too much. But just do a good job, be yourself as much as you possibly can be, and talk and interact. I was saying to my students the other day about the Commonwealth Games and the volunteering opportunities coming up, 13,000 volunteers. And, good for your CV and great for skills, but the people you can meet, from all over Birmingham and the West Midlands, you just don't know who you're going to meet at these places, do you?
No, you don't know who you're going to meet. So one of my friends, this is an interesting, you should get him on the podcast. He's interesting. His job is repairing vacuum cleaners. Okay. So he's a fellow dad at the school, and his job is repairing Dyson vacuum cleaners. And he knows more about networking than anyone. So this is a great example. The other day, he had to go to a model shop to pick up some glue for a model his son was making. Yeah. He came back from that model shop, and he's got, a few £100 worth of work, because when the guy sent the model, the guy says to him, makes chit chat, what do you do? Well, I repair Dysons. Oh, I've got 3 Dysons out the back that are broken. Oh, wow. I didn't even think a Dyson repairman existed. And he said literally every time he meets someone, he'll drop into conversation. If he buys something from eBay and goes to their house to pick it up, he'll start a conversation and mentions what he does, because everyone's got a vacuum cleaner. Everyone needs it serviced or repaired. And that's how he picks up business. So, I got some sports work the other week from a really good friend of my brother's. I got a text from him out the blue saying, have you got any capacity at the moment? Do you want to come in and work on this project? And that's just because, he was looking for someone to do social media. Oh, my mate's brother does that. I've been to the pub with him a few times. We've spoken about it. I'll get his number and give him a text. So really just about when you're in your career, but this is more if you're sort of in one of these freelance things, but also I know people in lawyer jobs that really go and purposely go out for lunch with other lawyers because they never know when an opportunity at another firm might come up.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, just talk, and
Yeah.
you just don't know where it's going to go, do you? You can have the greatest LinkedIn or Twitter profile in the world, I guess, to maybe get you noticed, but just talk,
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and it's really interesting. So a friend, like I say, my website's 3 or 4 years out of date, and I'm getting it redone. Partly as an ego thing because I want it to be up to date and show all the stuff I'm doing. But a friend of mine that works in the same industry,
Yeah.
I remember he set up about 12 years ago. He set up a website. He didn't like it after about a year. He took it down. He's had literally nothing like that in 11 years, and he still gets tons of work from word of mouth. So it really is. I mean, word of mouth and networking, you do need these things. The other thing I'd say to your students is, and I'm sure you have this into them, be careful what you say on Twitter. Even if you think you're 15, 16 now and no one's reading it, they will at one point. You see these stories of these cricketers in the last few weeks that have put awful sexist or racist stuff on there. Which I'm not saying your students would necessarily do that, but even getting into arguments with someone using terms that maybe you think are appropriate today, but may not be in 5 years, all of those things, it's so vital. I mean, if you look, I know you did look at my Twitter's very dull. Really, I'm just about promoting and retweeting clients, and I purposely keep it that way because I don't want to get into, I have strong views on certain issues, political issues, social issues, but I'm not going to air them on Twitter or publicly because you never know what client might come along in the future that reads through it and disagrees with it. So I think it's really, really important to keep your social media presence professional. Always think about future careers.
Couldn't agree more. I take very conscious decisions with what I put on my teacher Twitter versus my personal Twitter, which is basically just American football. But again, even on the personal one, regardless of my opinions and things, I don't get into arguments and things on there because what are you going to accomplish? In terms of PR then, as we start to kind of roll towards the end here, how glamorous is PR? And this is what one of the students asked me to ask you. I mean, I know you've worked for national newspapers. I know you've traveled. You've mentioned international wrestling companies and Impact Wrestling and boxing and sports. How glamorous is your life, Simon?
Since the pandemic, not very glamorous.
Oh, okay.
I spent most of my life in this office. Working in the media, journalism was pretty glamorous. I got to go on sort of press trips, travel trips where I went to Palm Springs or I went to Philadelphia and I got to review it. I got to go to, so I worked in sort of the showbiz side. I got to go to, some premieres, both in London. I got to go to a couple in LA. I got to go to wrestling events all over the world. I got to go to 5 WrestleManias, got to go to San Diego for a big Impact Wrestling event. So that was pretty cool, but that was just part of it. If you're in certain PR things, I know people that are in PR for sort of Nintendo or Sony, and that is glamorous. They get to take journalists all around the world to these big computer game events. They get to work on all the latest games. But I also know PRs who work for Heinz Baked Beans or do the PR for, really dull products. So that's not glamorous. They probably get paid a bit more because of the lack of glamour. But yeah, it's as glamorous as you make it. My life really, the last few years in PR hasn't been. I've got, if you're into what you do, I get to go to some big conferences and some good wrestling events and stuff like that. But I'm not jetting around, with famous actors and actresses. But it depends what branch you're going into and what you represent. But there are opportunities for glamour.
Yeah. And in terms of like the travel and things, and I know, like, I spoke to my friend who's a graphic designer and he says, no, I have to be in London. He has to be in London. That's where the work is. That's where the clients are. That's where the meetings are. How important is it to be based where you are for your job? Has that shifted in the past 18 months? And I know you mentioned you the 2 freelancers that work for you. You mentioned Manchester and Leeds, so you're making that kind of triangle between the north and the south there. So how important is it to be based where you are for PR and media?
In terms of what I do, in terms of being freelance, not so much anymore, because it's important for me to be in London every so often to meet with clients. Yeah, definitely. But I could work from, Manchester, from Birmingham, from Leeds, from Scotland, anywhere, and just come down for those meetings. I'm based in Chelmsford, which is about 30 to 60 minutes outside of London. So, I am a bit close for those sort of things. But really, today I'm working from home. Like I say, one of my clients is an American wrestling company. They're based in Nashville. I could literally be anywhere as long as I'm in the right time zone. So I think it's becoming less and less important. Obviously, if you're I mean, some of the PR firms also have, so the big PR firm called Frank, which is a very well-known PR firm. I think Alan Sugar's on their books and loads of the big brands and companies. They actually have a Manchester branch they call Mank Frank. So there are more regional opportunities opening. Obviously, there's the new big media city in Manchester. I know Birmingham's having some media organisations move down there as well. So I think as it spreads out a lot, it's becoming less important. Obviously, if you are based in London, there will be more opportunities. But I could be based anywhere at the moment. Once the pandemic's over, maybe I have to be in London a bit more. But at the moment, yeah, I could literally be sitting in your office now.
Yeah, fascinating. So what's next for you then? I mean, you've taken your little consultancy business over the past decade or so, and with your international clients, and you're getting the freelancers on board, and you're growing, and you've got your new website, which we're all going to be looking at. But what's next, man? I mean, where'd you go from here? Have you got like a 5-year, 10-year plan? Do you do that kind of long-term planning, or are you just kind of let's get out of COVID first?
I'm more the sort of, I just sort of take things one day at a time, really. Yeah, that's it. I don't really have a 5-10 year plan, other than getting to the stage where hopefully I've built up enough pension and reserves that I can retire. But really, yeah, just take one day at a time. Want to keep growing, maybe bring another freelancer on board, maybe attract a couple more clients. Like I say, redo the website, get a proper LinkedIn page for my consultancy, get an Instagram going. So although I do social media for lots of other people, we don't actually do it for ourselves. So, and it's often you'll find the thing that you work on the least is yourself. Yeah. You're so busy working for your clients or your boss, you actually work least on yourself. And I think that's quite common.
I was going to say that, I mean, with your networking and your social media, you're saying, your website isn't up to date. You want to do a LinkedIn page, you want to do Instagram and things. I think there's a belief that you have to be on those if you're going to do networking. Do you feel like you've missed any opportunities from not having all that up to date?
I mean, I think for the business I'm in, where it is really word of mouth, I think the only thing I've missed out on is sometimes people will check you out. So, you've been recommending someone, they'll check you out, and maybe my online presence for all of that doesn't look as good as other people's. But really, should SRX Consultancy, which is my business, have an Instagram page? It's something I always go 50-50 on, because what we're going to put on it, all we're going to be doing is promoting our clients, and sometimes I've seen things that it's actually put me off people. I've seen people with LinkedIn profiles and all they're doing is talking about how great they are and how wonderful they are and this great new client they've got. And sometimes that can put me off. I think definitely I have a personal LinkedIn, and I think that's really important. Everyone should have one. Is my business that doesn't really have a LinkedIn at the moment, which I think is something we need to work on. But I think if you've got a LinkedIn profile, that's the most important thing for students and for people, because that's really where employers will look. I don't think a Twitter one is secondary. I think Instagram's quite hard because it's more of a personal thing anyway. I don't know really if you want to be a lawyer or you want to be a doctor or you want to, you want to work in finance or wherever you want to work. What do you really put on Instagram? Here's me at college. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably less important. But the key thing is if you do have these pages, like we were saying earlier, keep them professional, keep them good. Don't put anything on there that you wouldn't want a future boss to see, that you want your parents to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My motto, my one is, somebody told me once, don't put anything on there that you wouldn't want your nan to see. And yeah, I've always stuck by that. So
exactly.
Keep it professional is a great message there. So let me ask you one last question, then, Simon, as we get towards the end here, which I did ask you in class many years ago. I wonder if your answer has changed now, if it stayed the same, or if you can even remember the question. So if you could go back to 17, 18 and give yourself a little bit of advice to kind of college Simon that you wish you kind of took on or used as like a mantra as you went forward, what would that advice be?
Oh, I'm interested to see what I said last time now. Yeah, I think my advice would be, like I said here, stay professional, work hard. People will notice hard work. Be nice to everyone. Take opportunities. Diversify. Make sure you've always got a backup plan. I think that's an important thing. Never put all your eggs in one basket. Try and make contacts, which is so vital. That's probably the one thing I wish I'd done more of in the early stages of my career, is make contacts that may have come in useful later. So when I was first starting my career, I was all about, what contacts can I make that will be useful for me right now? I'm thinking, actually, if I've been looking ahead, when I finish journalism, you know, and PR often was the route. What contact should I be making for that point? Yeah, so that's the one thing I probably wish I'd done then. But yeah, the advice always is, you know, things will go wrong. Don't worry too much if they do. Don't let it stress you out. You know, don't have sleepless nights because you missed the front page or you messed up a press release or something like that, because, you know, things will be forgotten, opportunities will come along again.
Thank you. I love the honesty there. That's great advice. Absolutely brilliant. And thanks for chatting. You know, really appreciate it as we get towards this last minute or so here. But yeah, I really do appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy things can get in your line of work, and as things start rolling and ramping up again. So yeah, Simon, really appreciate it, and we'll keep in touch, no doubt.
Yeah.
But what I'll do, I'll stop this recording in a second. We'll say a proper cheerio. But for now, I'll just say thanks very much for talking business. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you again sometime.
My pleasure. Thank you, Danny.
All right, thank you. Big old thank you here to Simon for sharing those insights with us. Truly unique perspectives, and I hope you got a lot out of that. Even if you're not interested in the PR, media and communications industry, how to start your small business and keep it growing and developing, that's really useful to hear. And let's not forget, be nice to people. That's some top-notch life advice there for all of us to take on board. So thanks, Simon. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody watching and listening. Appreciate you too. I hope you appreciate this podcast and the video and the audio. And if you do, please like, share, rate, review, subscribe. It'd be great to have you do that on all the podcast platforms that you listen to. And you can find me on social medias. Just have a look for Pardo's Business. I'm not too difficult to find. And I look forward to hearing or seeing our next guest, whoever that may be, on the next episode of Talking Business with Danny Pardo. And I'll catch you again soon. Thank you. Cheerio.